Buenos Aires, 1960. A city alive with noise and dust and the smell of asado on a Sunday. In the southwest suburb of Villa Fiorito, a boy was born who would one day make the world stop and watch. His name was Diego Armando Maradona. He came from nothing, not poetic nothing, but real nothing. Tin roofs, mud streets, flickering lamplight, football played barefoot with plastic bags tied into a ball. The family was large, the rooms small, the dreams larger than either. His father worked in a factory. His mother kept the house together like a captain steering through a storm. When the rain came, and in Villa Fiorito it always came, the streets turned to rivers, but the children still played, because the game was the one thing they could own. From the start, Diego was different. He moved with balance that didn't make sense for a child that small. When the ball touched his feet, it stayed there, as if gravity worked differently for him. Neighbors would stop to watch from windows and doorways, the way people watch weather changing. There was a feeling that something had arrived. He was 3 when his uncle gave him his first ball. He slept with it under his arm for years, fearing someone might take it away. In a life of uncertainty, the ball was the only thing he could trust. By the time he was 8, he joined a local youth team called Los Cebolitas, the Little Onions. They played in dust fields on the edge of the city, and Diego was their son. He dribbled past boys twice his size, laughing as he did it, the joy of creation written on his face. The team went on to win 136 games in a row. Every week, someone would whisper that the little one would end up in the national team. Talent and poverty don't usually share the same street for long. At 10, scouts from Argentina's juniors spotted him. He was brought to training sessions by bus, the ticket paid for by neighbors who believed his feet might save them all. He was small, barely 5 foot, but played like a giant had been shrunk to fit inside him. At 15, he made his debut in the Primera Division for Argentina's juniors, October 20th, 1976. Still a boy, hair wild, socks around his ankles, heart too big for his chest, he stepped onto the pitch as if it were a church and the ball a sacrament. After the match, a journalist asked how it felt to be the youngest player ever in the league. He smiled and said, "It felt like home." From that moment, Argentina knew his name. Soon, the world would too. But no one, not even Diego himself, could have imagined what was coming. Because this was no ordinary footballer. This was a story of faith and temptation, of miracle and madness. A story that would begin in mud and end in myth. By 1979, the boy from Villa Fiorito had become a phenomenon. Argentina had never seen anyone like him. Small, fearless, magnetic. He played as if the ball belonged to him by birthright. Crowds came just to see him warm up. Every touch carried music. Every feint made defenders hesitate, just long enough to fall. At Argentina's juniors he scored, assisted, entertained, and provoked. He made the impossible look casual. But his dream had always been blue and gold, the colors of Boca Juniors. That was his father's club, the working man's temple of La Bombonera, where songs didn't stop for 90 minutes and emotion felt louder than gravity. In 1981, he got his wish. Boca couldn't really afford him, but the deal was made with borrowed money, prayers, and belief. When he walked into the stadium for the first time, the roar felt alive, like the city itself had taken a breath. He wasn't a signing, he was a revelation. The partnership with the crowd was instant. They understood him, his fire, his defiance, his refusal to bow to anyone. In his first season, he won the scored wonder goals, and humiliated defenders twice his size. He celebrated with clenched fists and wide eyes, not for cameras, but for survival. He was proving that a boy from mud streets could stand above men in suits. That same year, he led Argentina's youth team to the World Youth Championship in Japan. They won it all. His performances were otherworldly: close control, balance, bravery. The Argentinians watching at home said it felt like seeing art painted live. The world began to whisper his name as prophecy. Then came the call from Europe. Barcelona, the dream of every South American, to cross the ocean and conquer the old world. In 1982, after the World Cup in Spain, the transfer became official. A record fee. A young man from Villa Fiorito now stood under the lights of the Camp Nou. The media called him the new Pelé. He hated that comparison. He didn't want to be the next anyone. He wanted to be himself. But Barcelona was not Villa Fiorito. It was money, pressure, politics. And Diego, still barely 21, carried the weight of a nation and the curiosity of the world. He dazzled at first, quick, fluid, untouchable. But injuries came. So did sickness and the first whispers of trouble. The rough defenders of Spain took turns kicking him. He fought back, sometimes too literally. In a brutal match against Athletic Bilbao, he was hacked down again and again until finally he snapped. A brawl erupted at the Copa del Rey final. Fists, chaos, cameras flashing. Barcelona suspended him. The press tore him apart. Yet even in those moments, his brilliance could not be denied. He had glimpses, goals that seemed choreographed by something divine, dribbles that defied physics. But the fire that made him unstoppable also made him unstable. He needed a place that would let him burn without destroying itself. That place was waiting in the south of Italy, a city of saints, sinners, and stories. A place that saw in Diego not a player, but a mirror. Napoli. That would be where Diego Maradona stopped being a footballer and became a religion. Napoli, 1984. The city was wild, beautiful, broken, like Diego himself. In the north of Italy, they laughed at it. To them, Napoli was poor, chaotic, southern, the kind of place success never visits twice. But to the people who lived there, it was home. And when Maradona arrived, they believed for the first time that heaven might have found its way south. 70,000 people filled the São Paulo Stadium for his presentation. They threw flowers, waved flags, cried, sang. One banner said, "We don't care what you've done. You're ours now." And he was. From the first match, the connection between Diego and Napoli went beyond football. He played with the same street hunger the people felt in their bones. When he scored, they screamed his name as if it could change their lives. And maybe, for a while, it did. Napoli wasn't supposed to win. In a league ruled by Milan, Juventus, and the great clubs of the north, they were meant to survive, not dream. But Diego didn't understand that kind of thinking. He made everyone around him believe they were chosen. He didn't just lift the ball, he lifted belief. Still, the city that loved him also consumed him. The streets adored him by day, and by night they tempted him with everything that came with power. He became part saint, part sinner. Caught between worship and excess, fame followed him home. Cameras, fans, noise. Every day was chaos, every moment another headline. He was too famous to walk, too human to hide. On the pitch, though, he was pure freedom. He played with a balance between fury and grace that no one had ever seen. He could stop time with one touch, turn defenders into ghosts, and score goals that made even opponents applaud. Each week, he wrote new scripture with his left foot, but the pressure never left him. Argentina wanted him at his best, Napoli wanted salvation, and Diego, trapped between the two, started to crack under the weight of expectation. He lived in two worlds, one of glory, one of guilt. When Italy played Argentina, the country tore itself apart over who to cheer. He had united a city, but divided a nation. And in the middle of it all, he kept playing, kept dancing, kept fighting. For Diego, conflict was never just part of life. It was life itself. The struggle fed him. He didn't need peace. He needed a ball, a crowd, and something to prove. 1986 Mexico, the World Cup, the stage where Diego Maradona became eternal. He had already lifted Napoli from mediocrity to belief, but now he would lift a nation. Argentina arrived in Mexico uncertain, doubted by their own press, haunted by politics and expectation. Diego arrived with fire in his eyes, not just to win, but to remind the world who he was. The heat was brutal, the air thin, the pitches dry and cracked. But the ball, it obeyed him. As always, every touch looked preordained, every dribble a sermon. Then came June 22nd, the match against England. A quarter-final drenched in history and tension. 4 years earlier, the Falklands War had left scars that hadn't yet healed. This was more than football. It was pride, revenge, redemption. In the 51st minute, Diego leapt toward a loose ball in the box. The goalkeeper reached out. So did Diego. The ball hit his fist, skimmed into the net. The referee didn't see it. The goal stood. Later, he would call it a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. The English called it cheating. Argentina called it justice. The world called it unforgettable. 4 minutes later came something beyond words. He picked up the ball in his own half, turned and ran. Past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players, twisting, spinning, gliding. Each step perfect, inevitable. He passed the goalkeeper, tapped it in, and ran to the corner flag, arms spread wide. The camera shook from the noise. Commentators screamed, "Genius, genius, genius." It wasn't just the goal of the century. It was the moment a man became myth. Argentina went on to win the World Cup. In the final against Germany, Diego didn't score, but everything flowed through him. When the whistle blew, he collapsed to the grass, arms raised, tears streaming. A boy from Villa Fiorito had conquered the world. The image became eternal, short, defiant, golden under the Mexican sun. Back in Napoli, the celebrations didn't stop for weeks. They claimed his victory as their own. Murals appeared on walls. Churches lit candles beneath his photographs. Children were named Diego. He had done what no one thought possible. He gave the south of Italy a god to believe in. A year later, he made it real. 1987, Napoli won their first ever Serie A title. Against the giants of Milan, Juventus, and Inter, the poorest club in Italy stood at the top. The city exploded. People danced in the streets, sang from balconies, painted his name across every wall. In Naples that summer, the dead were said to have heard the news. The world finally understood. This wasn't sport anymore. This was faith. Maradona had brought glory to places that had never known it. To Argentina, to Napoli, to every child who'd ever kicked a ball in dust and believed they might be more. He was the hand and the heart of football itself. 1987 to 1989. The world belonged to Diego Maradona. Napoli were champions. Argentina were champions. and Diego stood at the very center of both, adored, exhausted, immortal. He had reached the summit that most dream of, but few can survive. In Naples, his face was everywhere. Murals on churches, posters in classrooms, his name whispered in bars like a prayer. Children wore number 10 shirts not because it was fashionable, but because it meant faith. He wasn't just a player, he was a symbol that the forgotten could rise. On the pitch, he reached a level that defied reason. His touch softer, his balance sharper, his vision endless. He didn't play football, he composed it. Every flick, every pass, every run seemed to follow a rhythm only he could hear. When defenders closed in, he slipped between them like smoke. When he scored, the stadium roared as though the earth itself was applauding. In 1989, he led Napoli to their second major trophy, the UEFA Cup. They beat teams from Germany, France, and Italy's elite. At the San Paolo, they demolished Stuttgart in a final that felt more like a coronation. The city, for once, stood equal to Milan and Turin, and Maradona, standing on the balcony overlooking Piazza del Plebiscito, raised his arms as if to bless the crowd. Tears ran down faces below him. Flares turned the night sky blue and white. For a moment, it felt like joy had no shadow, but perfection is fragile. It doesn't last, and Diego, in his heart, knew it. The more he won, the less he could hide. He had power, wealth, friends in high places, and enemies in darker ones. Naples adored him, but it also owned him. He could not walk the streets. He could not be human. Fame became a cage disguised as love. The same city that cheered his goals offered temptations he couldn't refuse. Late nights turned into longer mornings. The man who once lifted nations now needed something stronger to lift himself. Still, when the whistle blew, none of it showed. He kept creating miracles. Each game felt like one last masterpiece before the curtain fell. He was playing at the edge of the world, fragile, brilliant, doomed. People around him could feel it. He was still smiling, still scoring, but behind his eyes the weight was building. You can't be a god forever in a world that expects you to bleed. And soon he would. By 1990, the god of Naples began to look tired. The fire still burned, but the smoke was catching up with him. The eyes that once saw the game clearer than anyone now showed the first signs of storm. Napoli was still his kingdom, but the crown had become heavy. He couldn't go anywhere without being surrounded. Children wanted a touch of his hand, old women wanted blessings, journalists wanted confessions. Every word, every glance, every step became a story. He was still their savior, but now he was also their prisoner. That summer brought the World Cup in Italy, a cruel twist of fate. Argentina were drawn against the host nation in the semi-final, in Naples. The city didn't know where its heart belonged. Their beloved Diego was playing against their country. He said softly before the match, "Naples is not Italy. Naples is its own." And the people believed him. Some cheered for Argentina that night. The rest felt torn in two. The match went to penalties. Maradona converted his with calm precision. Argentina advanced. Italy wept. In the north, they called him traitor. In Naples, they called him theirs. But the balance had broken. The press turned. The whispers grew louder. By 1991, the inevitable came. He tested positive for cocaine, suspended, shamed. The headlines that once called him divine now called him fallen. The photos of joy were replaced with mugshots, the chants of his name replaced with murmurs of disappointment. He left Naples in silence. No farewell match, no parade. The city that had once written his name in fire now erased it in fear. He fled back to Argentina, older, heavier, haunted. The years that followed were scattered. Seville, Newell's Old Boys, Boca Juniors again. Each return a brief spark in the ashes of a career that had burned too bright. He played on instinct, on memory, on pride. But his body couldn't follow his imagination anymore. He retired in 2000, a man still worshipped but long removed from his own miracles. The fall had been spectacular, yes, but it had never been simple. He wasn't destroyed by fame or wealth or drugs alone. He was destroyed by expectation, by a world that asked him to be more than human and punished him when he wasn't. Yet even in decline, Diego never hid. He smiled for the cameras, coached, returned to stadiums where his name still echoed through the stands. The love was still there, weathered, wounded, but alive. Because for all his flaws, he had given the world something pure. The feeling of seeing the impossible made real, and that can't be erased. In his final years, Diego Maradona walked slower. The weight of years, the echoes of cheers, and the ghosts of choices all followed him wherever he went. He coached, he laughed, he cried, he forgave. He was older now, softer around the edges, but still unmistakably himself. The same eyes that once scanned defenses now searched for peace. He managed clubs in Argentina and Mexico, still chasing the feeling that only a football pitch could give. Everywhere he went, people gathered to see, to thank, to remember. He couldn't escape being Diego Maradona, and he didn't try to anymore. He wore his past like a badge and a burden. His health declined, as it always would for someone who had lived too much for too long. Operations, medication, headlines that said what everyone feared but didn't want to accept. The world had seen him rise and fall and rise again in memory, but no one was ready for an ending. November 25th, 2020. The news broke like thunder. Diego was gone. A heart that had carried too much had finally stopped. Argentina fell silent. Naples wept as if it had lost a son. In Buenos Aires, they lined the streets, tens of thousands chanting his name, not in grief, but in gratitude. They carried his coffin wrapped in blue and white, past murals of his own face painted decades earlier. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped, as if even the sky needed to say goodbye. Napoli renamed their stadium in his honor, the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium. Fans lit flares outside, their smoke rising into the night sky like prayers. The city that had once lifted him and later condemned him now came full circle. Forgiveness, love, memory, all blending into one. And maybe that's how it was always meant to end. Not neat, not perfect, but human. He had been everything: saint, sinner, genius, addict, leader, survivor. Too flawed to be a god, too extraordinary to be a man. When people speak of him now, they don't talk just about goals. They talk about feeling, about the rush, the madness, the beauty of believing, even for a moment, that magic was real, that a boy from Villa Fiorito could rise from mud and give joy to millions. In the end, Diego Maradona didn't belong to Argentina, or Naples, or football. He belonged to everyone who ever needed proof that the impossible was possible. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of heaven, you can almost hear the sound of a ball being juggled softly, a rhythm that never stopped.